once again proving that a very large segment, particularly of our academic elites, seem to have taken 1984 not as a cautionary tale, but a roadmap. Stanford University's IT department, this is particularly coming out of their IT department, has an ongoing newspeak project. Now, those of you who haven't cracked 1984 since high school, newspeak was the language that the party developed in Orwell's future dystopia, Oceania, to limit speech and thereby to limit thought. So we see here in this classic description, don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. Now, apparently the folks over at Stanford, and not to pick on them, but many, many, many of their fellow academic elites, they don't take that as chilling. They take that as a grand idea. And they have this ongoing project to control how people think and what they can think by reconstructing the language. So this is, it would be funny if these people did not have the level of cultural power that they have. And if they were not going to a university that's going to graduate them into yet more powerful positions. So we want to take a look at some of these gems here.
Yeah, so this is an elimination of harmful language initiative, and they are broken up into different categories. The first category is ableist. We're not going to read every single one because we would be here all day, but they say,
it would almost be worth it, but no.
It
like
would
we could do a whole show just with each of these.
we probably
There's not
could.
one of them that is not risable.
Right,
not
exactly.
One.
So the only one I would say is not risable. Apparently, child prostitute. You shouldn't call someone a child prostitute. You should call them an exploited child. That's fair enough because the child's not willingly, a prostitute.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
Right. Okay. So we'll give him that one. We'll give him that one.
We'll give him one.
But here's how it works. Okay. So they say instead of using a word like addict, say person with a substance use disorder. And then they give the context. Using person first language helps not to define people by just one of their characteristics. Don't say basket case, say nervous, because basket case originally referred to one who has lost all four limbs and therefore needed to be carried around in a basket. Interesting. I did not know that. Did you?
I actually did know that.
Oh, wow.
I knew that because it has long been considered a particularly brutal way to punish somebody among criminal elements.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty hard.
But a true basket case, you don't just take off the arms and the legs. You take out the eyes, puncture the eardrums, and cut out the tongue.
All right, very good. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome for that New Year's warmth.
You should submit an edit to them and ask them to put that in there, saying, hey, you didn't accurately describe what a basket case actually is. Perhaps if you did, people will be more sympathetic to that term on this list. But here's one that I think is great. So you shouldn't call someone OCD. You should call them detail-oriented. And the reason is because OCD is an example of ableist language that trivializes the experience of people living with mental health conditions. Obviously, calling someone OCD does the exact opposite of that. It diagnoses a psychological disorder, right? Obsessive-compulsive disorder is unhealthy. Being detail-oriented is good. You should be detail-oriented. We'd have a better show if Russell and I were more detail-oriented, right? Nothing wrong with being detail-oriented, but OCD obviously takes it to an unhealthy extreme. That's the whole point of it. It's not to trivialize a mental health condition. It's to accurately describe it in the hopes that you can treat it.
Not only that, they're wrong in that to describe it the way that they're using it, that does not describe a lot of behavior that you would apply that to. I understand what they're saying. They're talking about using it where you're not strictly
right, where you're just being
something.
Casual. Yeah.
But listen, I will use myself as an example. I have got this very OCD behavior where I've got to look 5 times before I leave my house. And sometimes I will, as only children will tend to do, I will mock myself as I'm doing it. I will make it to my front door, and then I will come back and look back in my bedroom and go, yep, it's all still there. Yep, nothing moved. The desk didn't go across the room.
When I lived in the city, I was the exact same way. I had to lock my door 3 times very often because I was afraid my cat was going to escape. That was the thing. I had this OCD fear that my cat was going to run out of the apartment when I was gone.
No, it's just like an irrational thing. Something's going to catch on fire. I have a wire too close to a fabric. It's crazy. It's crazy. So when I say, yeah, this is very OCD, saying that's very detail-oriented is not accurate. That's not an accurate description of that behavior.
Right. Exactly.
That is OCD behavior. That is the spectrum of mental health. I am not OCD, but many of us who are not OCD may at moments be OCD or have traits that could be described as OCD traits. I'm not somebody who can't walk down the street without snapping 3 times and turning my head.
Right.
But that particular behavior is very OCD. Now, what separates me from somebody with OCD? Yes, if I really decided I'm not going to do this, I could stop myself.
Right.
And somebody who really has that diagnosis, they can't. For me, I'm like, well, it really doesn't go on for more than a minute, so whatever, man. I mean, I don't feel strongly enough about it.
Right.
That I really care that much.
Hey, on the bright side, you're less likely to burn your apartment down.
Yeah, there you go. That would be ironic if I tripped over a wire doing it and burned my apartment down. So what they're saying, that doesn't even function as language. That doesn't even function to describe what you're trying to describe when you say something like that.
There's a scene in a movie. It's the newest Lars von Trier movie called The House That Jack Built, where Matt Dillon plays this like serial killer who thinks of himself as an artist. It's a metaphor for like destructive artists, right? Like self-destructive people who destroy everything else in the name of creating art. He has OCD, and so it's a super dark movie, but it is funny because he stabs this woman and he goes to flee the crime scene, and you see in his head he feels like there's a drop of blood on the rug that's going to incriminate him. And so he goes back in and checks on it, and then he comes back out and he hears the cop siren coming. But he gets back out. He's like, I have to go back and check again to make sure it's not there. And he goes back twice while the police are bearing down on the house. So, yeah, that's an example of
that's me trying to go to work.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's Russell trying to go to work. Exactly. So there are different categories, obviously. There's ableism, ageism, colonialism, right? Cultural insensitivity. This is a whole section on imprecise language. And my favorite entry in the imprecise language is user. Now, don't forget, this is an IT program. So user. And they say instead of using the word user, you should use the word clients. Right? And their context is, while often associated with one who uses, i.e. software systems services, because this is an IT department, it can also negatively be associated with those who suffer from substance abuse issues or those who exploit others for their own gain. So you shouldn't call a user of a software system a user. You should call them a client.
So words can no longer have more than one meaning. Words no longer have context.
Yeah,
it's I want to bring this guy on. I saw a guy being interviewed on Quillette. They have a magazine. They're expanding into a YouTube channel.
I know Quillette, yeah.
They interviewed somebody who wrote a very interesting article arguing that the whole woke project is a make work effort for the PMCs, because look at all the equity officers who get a job now. Look at all of these academic departments that you open. How many thousands of useless degrees are they handing out teaching this garbage? There's a lot of money involved in this bullshit.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we will get to that in just a moment. But before we get too much into the thesis of what this all means, I want to just pull up one more out of the culturally appropriative section, Geronimo.
Yes.
Now, I have a special connection to Geronimo because one of my favorite college memories, and I don't have many great college memories. I think college is a complete scam and waste of time. And I think this list here is very good evidence of that. I think this is really exhibit A I would use in my case here. But instead of Geronimo, don't say anything, right? They say, most of these, they give you a substitute. They say none. Only use when discussing the historical figure of Geronimo. Why? Because Geronimo was a famous leader and medicine man whose name is used today as a caricature of the brave warrior, often during macho pursuits. So that's why you should not use the word Geronimo at all. They can't even think of a substitute. Just don't even touch Geronimo.
Okay, and that really makes no sense because the way that it's used, look, I could understand. I actually could understand why they want to change the names of the Washington Redskins or wouldn't want sports mascots that are like a caricature of Native American culture. I'm with that. This doesn't make any sense because the way that Geronimo would be used, if I'm understanding what they're saying correctly, and I think I am, is to demonstrate bravery. Geronimo, right? You jump. So would we consider it an insult if people yelled, Churchill, MacArthur?
Right.
It's demonstrating a respect for the figure. If you look at a lot of these, it's really just, I do feel part of it is making work for PMCs. I think also it's a way of enforcing cultural superiority by creating jargon so dense and impossible to navigate that it serves to distinguish the priestly class from the unwashed deplorables. Right? You're not speaking like this. It distinguishes you as lower class.
Absolutely.
And in terms of the kind of thinking behind it, one of the things that defines psychopaths is their inability to understand metaphor and simile. And this whole thing is full of that kind of thinking. It's psychopathic. It's just, you don't understand context. You don't understand metaphor. You don't understand how saying something in one situation is very different from saying it in another situation. So they have a few things, as you pointed out, one that actually makes some kind of sense. But most of it is asserting cultural superiority, creating jargon to separate the elect from everybody else. They don't really want everyone to speak like this. That would make them not special. If everyone started to speak like this, they would up the ante. Exactly. They would come up with, and this kind of represents upping the ante already. They already pushed it, and now it's become too mainstream. They have to push it further, and they'll just keep doing this until society snaps and it becomes just untenable to behave this way without severe social consequences, which I think is coming.
Well, look, this demonstrates the age-old concept of the secret knowledge, right? There has to be a secret knowledge that
this
you
is
attain.
Latin. They're speaking Latin.
Here. Right, exactly. Because if there's no secret knowledge at these places, then what's their reason to exist? Then the only reason to exist is to basically coerce people into buying into the system. So they can buy in, get a piece of paper that says they've bought in. They show that to the person who's interviewing them. Here's my slip. See, I bought in. Now I'm here to get what's mine because I bought in. That's all college is, right? But that sounds kind of shallow. And so they can't have it present itself that way. Right? So there has to be some knowledge that only we, as the enlightened, privileged few who have the luxury of going to school, much less also, obviously, an elite school like a Stanford, right? They have to have the ultra secret knowledge, the super secret knowledge of words that the normies or the people who go to, filthy, Vanderbilt or, Notre Dame, those riffraff.
Or state school.
Right. Or state school. Forget it.
School.
They don't know. You don't call someone using your software a user. You call them a client. Right.
Well, and then
Geronimo. That was, I mentioned there was a kid in college. I went to UMass Amherst for a year and a half, and giant school. So the dorms were very, very tall buildings. There's a 6th-floor dorm building. I'm walking through the, whatever common area. I hear this kid open his window. He pushes a desktop computer, a full console. This was almost 20 years ago. They had a full console. Holds it out the window, just yells, Geronimo, drops it out of his 6th-floor window. Doesn't look to make sure no one's walking under him. doesn't like try to be careful, doesn't issue an actual warning sign like watch out down there, I'm about to drop this. Nope, just opens, Geronimo drops. Could have fucking killed somebody, right?
Good thing he hadn't read this, or no.
Yeah, right, exactly. If he hadn't read this, he would have. Then I guess the appropriate thing to do would just be to not say anything. Just open the window and drop the computer out a 6th floor window with no warning
for the
whatsoever.
students that they had Geronimo at that time.
Exactly.
Please clap.